Dear great listeners, welcome to the AgileCast, a podcast series for Agile explorers from Xivia Agile community of consulting and transformation. XACT is a community of seasoned Agile coaches and passionate Agile enthusiasts. Knowledge sharing is one of our core values. We believe sharing is the only way to learn and care about our community. We have been hosting webinars, meetups, and grand annual conference named Agile NCR. And of late, we decided to share our podcast series, which can help our Agile fellow travelers in their journey to find out ways for humanizing the business innovation. In this series, I am going to talk about how systems thinking emerges from the human dynamics in Scrum. I would like to share a real-time coaching experience to understand systems thinking and its structure better. Shri is a very bright and talented platform architect of our program. She is always very supportive and she eagerly shares her experiential knowledge with various Scrum teams. Every team needs her guidance to make better decisions in their design and architecture. Vale is a Scrum Master who joined Shri's program couple of months back. He used to come with me for lunch and we will discuss how to improve the agility of our organization. Vale's team's last 2 sprint reviews didn't go well. His team was not able to achieve their sprint goal. He was so disappointed and was not in his usual self. From Vale's conversation, I understood that his entire team was very upset with Shri because she was not spending enough time with them and suggested poor technical choices which led them nowhere. I was surprised because Shri is one of the most collaborative persons in the program and always focused on adding more value to the product. Other teams also complained the same about Shri. I know Shri very well personally too. So, I had decided to have a one-to-one conversation with her to find out the root cause of the issue. Shri is dynamic at the same time very humble person. Her intelligence is impeccable. Being an Agile coach, my instinct sensed some systemic issue here. Before we jump into Shri's actual problem, let us explore more about our thinking process and its structure. I always wonder how amazing our mind is. It surprises us every moment with its beauty and mystery at the same time. I strongly believe in inspiring words from global automobile giant Toyota. Good thinking, good products. These words capture the whole essence of any lean and learning organization. Most of the organizational wicked problems we face result from the difference between how we think organizations work and how they work. The real world works in systems, complex networks of many interacting variables. The first step in addressing this disconnect is to take an honest look at how we think as individuals and as leaders. Our thinking process is a complex adaptive system, which is capable of adapting, evolving, and changing with the environment. It changes its internal structure to meet the demands that arise from changes within the system or from places outside the system. We receive information in the form of feedback from the real world in reaction to things we say and do, and we structure this information to make meaning of it. The structuring or organizing of information is called thinking, and the meaning is our mental model. And system thinking is not a process, but an emergent property of complex adaptive systems called thinking. Here is a definition from Barry Richmond, who coined the term systems thinking in 1987. Systems thinking is the art and science of making reliable inferences about behavior by developing an increasingly deep understanding of underlying structure. Systems thinking often involves moving from observing events or data to identifying patterns of behavior over time, to surfacing the underlying structures and mental models that drive those events and patterns. The iceberg is one of the most frequently used models to explain systems thinking. In the iceberg model, the piece of the structure that appears above the surface represents a single event. Just below the surface, a deeper level of examination reveals patterns of events or trends. Submerged below the level of the trend is the structure, the foundation that supports and creates the behaviors higher up in the pyramid. At the next level down, our mental models and those of the people who came before us affect the structures we put in place and the way we understand the top parts of the iceberg. Each level down the iceberg offers a deeper understanding of the system being examined as well as increased leverage for changing it. Now we will come back to Shree's problem and find a root cause for it. When I met her on that day, it was a different story. She was dull and completely lost in her thoughts. I started my conversation casually and created an environment for her to feel herself. Shree, you are looking very dull. You are not in your usual self. What happened? She talked in a gloomy tone and told, Bala, people are doubting my expertise. It really hurts. I empathized with her and took the conversation to understand the patterns and trends. I said to her, Shree, I believe in your ability. There is no doubt in that. I want to know what has been happening. From when you are not able to deliver value as expected, because I know you are able to bring more value to our customers. She said, recently I have been engaged with our new client, which started few sprints back. It happens to be like I have to support more teams. Then onwards I am really finding difficult to spend quality time with all teams. I started to understand her problem and asked, Shree, why are you supporting more teams? Why can't you share your knowledge with teams and mentor them so that you will find more time? Here comes the interesting part. She replied, then I can't meet my performance goal for this year. One of the goals is to support many teams. My manager Tej is very specific about this goal. I thought in my mind, the real problem got its attention, the underlying structure unveils itself. Then I said, Shree, thanks for your time. I understood the actual root cause of the problem. Before our meeting, I was thinking that this would be a systemic issue. Now it became true. I will talk to Tej then. Shree was relaxed and I was able to see a glimpse of hope and positivity in her eyes. And she thanked me for the meaningful conversation. Then I met Tej. Tej is a very sensible person and open to new ideas. When I explained him about the systemic issue and how it impacts on people like Shree, he became very curious. I continued to explain that organization structure is often determined by its policies and procedures. Tej asked me, Bala, is there any way to build the right structure in an organization? I replied very positively, yes. Scrum is one of the ways to provide those structure and mental models to create an environment for the people to become skillful systems thinkers. Tej smiled and said, Bala, we are using Scrum for more than a year. I don't think it helps to build the needed structure. I asked Tej, how are you seeing the Scrum? He said, Scrum is just a process framework to bring agility in an organization. I replied, if you want to know more about Scrum, can I have your time now? Tej got more interested and said, why not? I said, if an organization sees the Scrum as only a process, it will be adopting zombie kind of Scrum called Mechanical Scrum. But if it sees Scrum as a dynamic, complex, adaptive systems, which is spirited with Scrum values, system thinking emerges and the real benefit of Scrum is unlocked. Tej was surprised and immediately asked, what? Scrum is a complex adaptive systems? Yes. Scrum DNA is rooted in complex adaptive systems. As per the research done at the University of Notre Dame, USA, self-organization, simple rules, feedback loops, emergence are the key characteristics of the complex adaptive systems, and all these characteristics are applicable for Scrum too. The core rules of Scrum, like time box, definition of done, sprint goal, bind the essential elements to provide the required structure. Shared goals, clear accountabilities, and right boundaries create the right environment for an effective self-organization. Scrum is founded on empirical process control theory or empiricism, which embraces the closed-loop feedback control. Fantastic, Bala, Tej replied. It is really an eye-opener and thanks for the new perspective. But I have a thought in my mind. How do you say Scrum provide a required structure? I replied, I really like your insightful question, Tej. Let me explain in detail. Like Scrum, our thinking process is also a complex adaptive system. Complexity theory tells us to look for the simple rules that underlie the complex adaptive systems. The research findings of Dr. Cabrera, a prominent thought leader in systems thinking, explains that the structure of our thinking is based on 4 simple rules called DSRP. Tej said, wait Bala, it will be great if you could explain whether these rules are applicable for Scrum too. If so, could you explain with respect to our Shree's problem? Sure Tej, here we go. Rule 1, distinction. We can see how everything overlaps with everything else. We just decide where to put the dividing line between this thing and that thing. This is known as identity or other or a distinction. Scrum's distinct roles, events, artifacts set the boundaries and clear accountability. Rule number 2, systems rule. We can see how everything has smaller parts and is also part of bigger things. We can take things apart or combine them with other things. This is known as part or whole or a system. Sprint goal is a part of business goal. Definition of done from the development organization is about the shared understanding of what it means for work to be completed to ensure transparency. All these essential elements which are parts are within the wholeness of Scrum. Rule number 3, relationship. We can see how everything connects to anything else. It might be a physical connection, but it could also be conceptual. This is known as action or reaction or a relationship. All the Scrum elements are interlinked with each other. It builds the bridges between various business units in an organization. Rule number 4, perspective. We can see how everything can be considered from multiple viewpoints. We can imagine who or what is doing the viewing and what they are looking at. This is known as point or view or a perspective. Scrum roles and events give multiple viewpoints by embracing perspectives of various stakeholders. These 4 rules do not operate in isolation but in parallel. The collective dynamics of these simple rules lead to the emergence of a new thinking called systems thinking. When we are faced with a problem or are curious about something and just want to understand it better, try thinking on purpose. Notice the parts and wholes, where the dividing line is placed between things, how the parts connect and affect each other, and what things look like from different perspectives. In our Shree's case, her performance goal is output driven, not an outcome based. She is assessed by how many teams she is supporting, not by how she shared her knowledge and helped the teams to become self-organized and cross-functional. The purpose of the Scrum is to deliver a valuable product to the customer by nurturing self-organization and cross-functionality in an organization. But our management mental models, which believe more in resource efficiency than flow efficiency, reflect in the company's policies, and ultimately it affects the employee engagement. Tej asked, what are mental models? I continue my explanation. A mental model is our understanding of the world, an approximation of reality based upon our ideas, beliefs, and current and past experiences. We use mental models to approximate the real world. In turn, the real world gives us feedback in the form of information. Systems thinking is a bridge between our mental models, how we think the world works, and reality, how it actually works. In order to understand how actual organizations function, we must first consider that these are our mental models that are changeable, adaptable, and malleable. Tej was quite happy and wanted to know what drives the mental models. I said the common values shared by the organization. A company's ability to move from where it is to where it wants to be doesn't reside purely in its people's current skills, but in their collective aspirations as well. Scrum's structure is supported on mental models called Scrum Values. Understanding the human dynamics called Scrum Values is the key here. Tej nodded his head in agreement and said, Bala, can I say Scrum Values are our guiding post? Absolutely, Tej. Scrum Values are the inner compass and guiding light for the organization to deliver a valuable product to the customer by creating cross-functional and self-organized teams. Tej asked then, are Scrum Values only enough? I replied, no Tej. Scrum's structure and values go hand in hand. The rules and principles of Scrum framework give the required structure which decides the relationships and interactions between the Scrum elements. Scrum values nurture those structures with their positive flow of energy. The same way, Scrum's structure also fosters the Scrum values, and both are essential to create an engaging environment for the people. Engagement for the people is the key for any organization to unleash its potential and become a learning organization. After a deep thought, Tej replied with more clarity and a man with vision. Bala, thank you for the wonderful explanation about our thinking process and how to see Scrum as a complex adaptive system. Recently, I read a neuroscience article. In that, the neuroscientists discovered that when our brain learns a new task, it encodes the new information by tuning connections between neurons. I am able to relate that with Scrum. Awesome, Tej. That is the essence of empiricism too. Learning by doing. Scrum is all about how people genuinely interact with each other and having the meaningful conversation. Tej said, now I understood the real reasons for the change in my team members' behavior. I will immediately change the performance goals which will encourage the learning culture. Tej left the meeting as a most relieved person. As Scrum caretaker Gunther says, Scrum is more about behavior than it is about the process. Systems thinking emerges from the human dynamics of Scrum called Scrum Values, which fosters the mental models to bring alignment with the real world. Systems thinking helps us to understand and optimize the customer journey, the full value stream from concept to cash. The crux of learning organization is about shared changes in mental models of individuals working there. So the mental models should be ingrained with Scrum values. My thoughts on 5 Scrum values are commitment to create an engaging environment for the people, courage to change the status quo, focus on flow of value to the customer, openness to live the art of possible, respect the diversity. Scrum is a framework which is intentionally incomplete to give enough space for the people to experiment, evolve, raise their metacognitive skills and mindfulness to the next level. So, my dear listeners, this real-time example might help us to understand about systems thinking, how it emerges from Scrum and solves wicked problems. In this case, Tej is very open and ready to experiment, but it is not the same case as always. It needs growth mindset to inspect and adapt. Let's live the Scrum values, change the mental model, align with reality, travel in the path of simplicity, and navigate the complexity, and create an engaging environment for people like Shri. Shall we?